the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes, once again, Mr. Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars was with us during the NFL draft, recapping and talking about Luke Farrell and his new home down in Jacksonville. But now he is back, continuing our Buckeye road trip around the NFL. Mr. Wiggins, how you doing today?
I'm great. It's good to be with you always, you and the Buckeye Nation.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate it. Glad you're back and glad you're helping us continue our trip around the NFL, looking at former Buckeyes and what their expectations are for the upcoming season. First guy up to date on the defense, a rookie last season, played in 11 games, started 6, Mr. Davon Hamilton. How do you assess his rookie season?
I actually like it. There was a point where early in the preseason, I tried to watch the tape a little bit. I looked at some reviews from the draft, and I was like, I don't know. And I don't know how this absolutely fits, because what the Jaguars actually needed was penetration. They needed guys who could really disrupt the quarterback, and Davon looked like a pure nose tackle. Then the season started, and actually in the first half of the season, he played better than the guy that was picked 8th overall, the kid that's in Carolina. Davon Hamilton really started to show something. Now, let me preface that by saying this. It's hard to see stuff when a team goes 1-15, right? But
yes,
when
sir.
when you really pay attention to how he played, he was very disruptive. And he didn't get a lot of sacks, but he created a lot of pressure. And he was a guy that busted through the line a lot. So now my feeling is, I know they went out and they got Malcolm Brown to play nose tackle. Can they move him around a little bit in this new multiple front under Joe Cullen? We're going to take advantage of the fact that, look, 6'4", 325, 330 doesn't, you don't get that very often. And you really don't get it very often when they're able to move around the way that he was able to move around. I think he's really one of the pieces that Urban Meyer are looking forward to playing well this year for Jacksonville.
I sure hope so. I sure hope that there are some things that he can continue to solidify his spot down there in Jacksonville. You mentioned about how you weren't sure if it was going to be him, but now you really like some things that you saw specifically. And if you could get a little nerdy on us, what specifically, anything else that you haven't mentioned that you liked from him in year one?
Well, yeah. The thing is to continue to win.
Okay.
When you don't have the completion of the season, now I have to think that he's going to go back to square one a little bit with his injury. And that's one of the reasons why they went out and got Malcolm Brown, and they continued to show up the defensive line position. That and the fact that Joe Cullen, they're going to play like Baltimore. And if you think about Baltimore, when you look at the Ravens, there's always a different guy in the game. It's because they use a lot of rotation, and they're very high octane, and they go a mile a minute, and they run a lot of stunts. I think he has an opportunity to come in under the radar if he's healthy, which I think he is. He did not start the season under any kind of injury protocols or the preseason. I think he's got a chance to really show up. Like I say, that size and his ability to, in a scheme last year where he was playing nose tackle that didn't really call for him to get pressure, he was able to get pressure. So now I think when you put him next to Malcolm Brown, and the Jaguars had a problem stopping the run the last couple of years, you put him next to Malcolm Brown. Now you got 2 325-pound space eaters, and you're not hurt by the fact that the kid can't rush the passer, because you saw the penetration. You saw him being disruptive in the backfield last year. And I'm telling you, man, it's just like when you get a young guy who can produce at the NFL level, it's like getting a true freshman in college, and all of a sudden he does something and you're like, wow, they can continue to build on that. Now with a system that isn't so much of a shell system the way they played defense here in Jacksonville over the last few years, they're going to be multiple. They're going to be different. I think this unit and this coaching staff is really going to be specific and make him do the things that he does well, and don't ask him to do the things that he doesn't do well. And I think that's going to bode well for him and Jacksonville as a whole.
You mentioned his ability to get up the middle and kind of be a tad disruptive. One pass breakup, 5 QB hits last season from the interior of the defensive line. That's not easy. Now the
No.
pass breakup that may happen. I mean, that could be a fluke. Oh, put my hand up, I jump at the right time. That may happen when you're that big, that massive, that tall. You have the length that he does. But those 5 QB hit totals are hard to come by. You get guys that are 3 technique D tackles that don't get that. You may get some defensive ends that in a 3-4 set that don't get that. So for him to get that from the interior, man, Wiggins, that's tough. That's tough. And that's a sign for a team that went 1-15. That's a sign of hope, a promise that hopefully he can do that in year number 2.
It absolutely is a sign. And you're right. You look at the stats and you go, there ain't nothing to shake a stick at, right? But then you have to watch the game. So the stats, people say numbers don't lie, but I always say numbers also don't tell the whole story. Yes, and when you watch him play, when you watch the game, you saw him flash a lot more. So the difference between getting a sack and a quarterback hurry is about this big. And then the difference between getting a quarterback hurry and actually making the quarterback throw the ball without you getting credit for that hurry is also this big. And when you watch him play, consider this. Now, they were 1-15, means people were running the ball because the Jaguars, they were behind all the time. So if he gets a chance with other people around him and other parts of this situation where you had Caleb Von Chason, who didn't do much last year. You have Josh Allen, who didn't do much last year. That's a first-round rookie from 2020 and a first guy from 2019 that was supposed to make a lot of noise. The bottom line is when you saw him, he was not a liability, and he was able to stuff the run the way that everyone expected him to. So like you said, when you get those pressures and you get those quarterback hurries, and it's really not a part of your responsibility, then it kind of sticks out and it resonates with people that actually watch the game minute by minute.
Tony, anything else you want to leave us with Davon Hamilton about what we can expect from him next year?
I'll tell you what you do know is this: the staff here coached him at Ohio State, so that's a good thing. They know him, they recruited him, they know what kind of cloth he's cut from. They probably advised teams when he was in the draft that led him to be a 3rd-round pick in the first place. So when you get that familiarity and you get that understanding, it helps communication and what's to be expected. And you combine that with the fact that he put something on paper last year for the Jaguars before he got hurt. And because he did that, like I said, I'll go back to this: 6'4", 325, 330. He's 22, 23 years old. I think anybody in the league would love that, but I know Joe Cullen is chomping at the bit to have a guy that big and that active on the interior of that defensive line, even just to take up blockers so that guys like Miles Jack can run and flow to the ball. That stuff is underrated. You know, a lot of times nose tackles don't get the stats and don't get the credit that people that they deserve to get, because no one really understands exactly what their job is. You know what sometimes their job is to make the linebackers be able to run clean and go make tackles and clean up a mess. So I really do believe that because of the fact that there's familiarity with staff and familiarity with expectations, along with that he independently put something on tape last year, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I think the Jaguar fans should be hopeful.
I sure hope so. I believe Buckeye fans are very excited. If you could, Tony, very quickly, let everybody know where they can catch you on Twitter and also where they can catch your show as well.
Shop Talking Wig is what it is, man. You know, that name is because I've been a barber for 30 years and I run my mouth all the time, as you can tell. So it's Shop Talking Wig on Twitter. Locked On Jaguars Monday through Friday, every single day. And Locked On NFL on Wednesdays, along with James Rapine, who covers the Bengals on a daily basis. And we get it in on the Locked On NFL Today, Locked On NFL podcast.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. We will continue this trend all week long. This is not the only time Tony will be with us. Check back tomorrow to see what Buckeye player Tony and I talk about.